I mean, I met you at the Biohacking Congress last year in Miami, and I had known of spermidine. I had heard people like Dave and others talk about you were on there, but a lot of people haven't heard about this, and it's a very interesting molecule. Can you give us a little bit about the history and maybe what brought you into working with this product?
Sure. So yeah, I had not heard about it. It was funny. My background, I'm an exercise physiologist and sports scientist by training. I've taught university for 35 years, but I'd kind of left academics and was working in another industry. And I get a call one day from a buddy and says, "Hey, what do you know about autophagy?" And I said, I have a passing understanding. I haven't done a deep dive into that yet. And he said, "Have you ever heard of something called spermidine?" I'm like, "Nope, that's a new one to me." So he sent me the links. He said, "Do some work on this and see what you can figure out." And literally it started with a TED Talk, an Austrian TED Talk that Dr. Frank Medeo did. And I'm like, okay, this is really interesting. And so when you understand autophagy, and I think you understand this and most of your listeners do, that, listen, living longer is about fighting inflammation. Inflammation is when everyone talks about living to 120 or 180 or whatever. Well, you can't get to 120 unless you can get through 70 to 90. I mean, that's the challenge. And right now, the thing that's going to keep you to getting from 70 to 90 is an inflammatory related disease. Whether it's a drop in your immune system or cancer or cardiovascular disease, it's all inflammation related. Well, when you start to look at autophagy, listen, those two are inverse to each other. As inflammation goes up, autophagy goes down. As you raise autophagy, inflammation comes down. So that's one of the basic things we pick up along the way. Autophagy is critical for longevity. Well, and when you look at that, it's critical for a lot of healthy aspects that we're fighting in this modern lifestyle that we live in. So Dr. Frank Medeo, he is a researcher at the University of Graz in Austria, started looking at this novel molecule called spermidine. Spermidine was discovered 400 years ago. The guy that discovered the single lens microscope, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, probably a bit of a freak, because somewhere shortly after he figures out how to count threads he's got semen on a glass and he's looking at what's in his semen.
Such a guy thing to do.
I'm telling you, and I wonder what would happen if we had given that first microscope to a woman. Right. How much further ahead would we be? But he described these crystalline structures in semen. That's all that happens for almost 200 years. Then some Dutch researchers dig back into this molecule, and that's when they gave it the name spermidine. Has nothing to do with sperm. It's found in semen, mother's milk, babies, and all cells actually. In the 80s, we were looking at spermidine as it related to cancers. There's correlational stuff there, not causal stuff there. But in 2016, I think you know this, but they gave a Nobel Prize to the Japanese researcher that described autophagy and the processes of autophagy. Well, this was a great breakthrough. And then Dr. Medeo started looking at autophagy benefits as it relates to senescent cells, and then started using spermidine and put it on senescent cells and saw the revitalization of cells. So we see autophagy, senescence it can be caused by a lack of autophagy. As we increase autophagy, we cellular behavior return to normal. And this was the important part. So Dr. Medeo did this work in the 2019s, 2020s, 2018s, 19s, and 20s. And then they figured out how to extract spermidine from spermidine-rich wheat germ in Austria. So that's where Spermidine Life came from. We are a spermidine-rich, it's called Salvio extract. Spermidine is actually what's called a polyamine. Your audience has heard of an amino acid. An amino acid, if you take the acid off an amino acid, you wind up with a polyamine. There's nitrogens and carbons and so forth. It's a fairly stable molecule. There are other in the class. So our Spermidine Life product not only has spermidine, but it has the precursor to spermidine, putrescine, and the postcursor, spermine. So it's got that full bandwidth of natural polyamines, and that's where we came from. They started in the market about 3 years ago, and myself and 2 other guys have been ramping this company up in this country.